The last one up, guys, is from Zach Hayden. I just finished reading one of the best interviews I've read in a while with James Gunn today. Gunn talks about the whole fired, rehired situation. I found it really moving and made me appreciate him even more. Just wondering if you have read it yet, and what is your takeaway from it?
Yeah, we, of course, have gone through kind of a year's worth of drama surrounding James Gunn and, all the stuff that went on with him, the firing. Should he have been fired? No. Did I like how Alan Horn handled that? No. All that kind of stuff. We don't need to rehash all that stuff. Deadline just did a really, and kudos to Deadline, they just did a great interview with James Gunn that really for the first time, James Gunn has opened up to talk about the situation. And Rob, when it was all going down, I remember you and I were talking about this. And one of the things that I said is, I am incredibly impressed with how James Gunn has handled this. Because a lot of people, maybe you, maybe me, maybe a lot of you guys, had something like that happened, could have lashed out, could have got very defensive. James Gunn didn't do any of that. He just quietly accepted what was happening. He accepted full responsibility and was very gracious through the whole thing. Now, he's never really opened up about it until now, this great interview. Now, you have to forgive me, guys. I'm going to read a bunch of it here just because I believe a lot of it's really relevant to talk to. I know it's a little bit boring just watching me read something, but I want to read just a couple of excerpts here from this interview that I thought were really impressive. Let's just say that. There's this first section from the interview in Deadline where James Gunn was talking about whose fault was it that, all this happened to him. And he basically said this. He said, I don't blame anyone. I feel and have felt bad for a while about some of the ways I spoke publicly, a decade before. The ways I spoke publicly, some of the jokes I made, some of the targets of my humor, just the unintentional consequences of not being more compassionate in what I'm putting out there. I know that people have been hurt by things that I've said, and that's still my responsibility, that I wasn't as compassionate as I should have been in what I say. I feel bad for that and take full responsibility. Disney totally had the right to fire me. This wasn't a free speech issue. I had said something they didn't like, and they completely had the right to fire me. There was never any argument of that. Then he goes on, when he was talking about, they asked him a great question about how did he start to deal, or did he ever come to terms with the fact that he lost his Guardians of the Galaxy franchise? And he said this, I was writing Suicide Squad and thought of Guardians 3 as being long gone. I guess it was a possibility for a while, but the initial conversations with Alan, that's Alan Horn, the head of all the Disney studios, weren't, let's figure out if I should come back. It was, let's talk about this. It was like the breakup of my marriage. You remember he was married to Pam from The Office. I forget the actress's name, though.
Jenna Fisher.
Thank you very much, Jenna. He was married to Jenna Fisher for a while. It was like the breakup of my marriage. I got divorced and then had those conversations with my ex-wife. Let's get along as well as we possibly can and be kind to each other because we're both a large part of each other's lives. And by the way, it should be mentioned, they still are a large part of each other's life. They're always very nice to each other, at least online. And then he starts talking about when it happened and when he got fired. And it gets really personal. He writes, that first day, I'm going to say it was the most intense of my entire life. There have been other difficult days in my life, from the time I got sober when I was younger to the death of friends who committed suicide, but this was incredibly intense. It happened, and suddenly it seemed like everything was gone. I just knew in a moment that it happened incredibly quick. I had been fired. It felt as if my career was over. And then finally, we're going to end on this about the response he got from people when it did happen, he got fired. And then came this outpouring of real love from my girlfriend, Jen, my producer, and my agents. Chris Pratt calling me and freaking out, Zoe Saldana and Karen Gillan all calling and crying, Sylvester Stallone FaceTiming me, and of course, Dave Bautista, who came out so strong. That amount of love that I felt from my friends, my family, and the people in the community was absolutely overwhelming. In order for me to have fully felt that love for the first time, the thing that needed to happen was the apparatus by which I was feeling falsely loved had to be completely taken away. Again, guys, this is just a small excerpt of the interview. I highly recommend going over to Deadline and checking out this interview when you get the chance. You know, Rob, you and I have talked about this issue very much over the past year. You know, whether we are all on the same page. At least a lot of us are on the same page about whether Disney should have fired them. No question, they totally had the right to fire them. I was always of the position that I understand why. I wouldn't have done it myself, but I understand why, all that kind of stuff. For a guy like James Gunn, who is riding on top of the world, you know, he's a beloved indie filmmaker to start with. Then he transitions to the big blockbuster with Guardians of the Galaxy. Beloved. The Guardians are now a key central figure in all the MCU. They promote him to kind of being a co-shepherd with Kevin Feige when it comes to the or Kevin Feige's right-hand man, I should say, when it comes to doing the galactic scope of the MCU moving forward. All this stuff. And like that, it was gone. And it all fell out from under him and all that kind of stuff. Rob, I'm going to tell you what, I read this interview, and to me, it epitomizes the grace, the understanding, and the class that James Gunn really has. I've always said the things he joked about a decade ago were idiotic, and it was his own fault, and he's acknowledged that. But through this whole ordeal, I have been overwhelmed by the humanity he's shown. I'm glad that he and Alan Horn were able to put all these things back together again. I'm glad he never did what a lot of us would have done, quite frankly, and come out and lashed out against Disney, which he totally would have been understandable if he did. He never did that. Bridges have been repaired. He's back for Guardians 3, and he's doing Suicide Squad 2. To me, this is one of the most exciting developments in comic book movie history. I'm almost glad he got fired, because if he didn't get fired, he wouldn't be doing a DC movie and a Marvel movie. I think this is marvelous. But at any rate, Rob, you read these comments, you read this interview. What are the things that stand out to you the most?
Well, you know, I think he got snapped like Thanos, you know, and I think in this day and age, where old tweets are being dredged out and people are being pilloried for things they said 10 years ago or whatever, as if they're evil or these people should be destroyed. I think what James Gunn did is a lesson to everyone. I think it's not only was it a study in grace, but it's like this is how you're professional in this day and age. You let things shake out as they are. You don't lash out on social media. You just keep quiet. And you let the machinations grind away and see where things will fall, because ultimately, if you're not guilty of some egregious transgression against real people, if it's just jokes or things, you have to. And I know James Gunn; he's a great guy, and his character willed out, and I think what happened was terrific, and he's got 2 movies out of it instead of 1. And who wins? We win as the audience. We're going to get hopefully a great Suicide Squad movie, because it can't be any worse than the last Suicide Squad movie. And we get Guardians 3, Volume 3, helmed by him. So we're going to win twice, which is great.
And you know, I got to say, you will all remember, I was kind of harsh on Alan Horn throughout the whole, and I still don't agree with how he handled this. It's not that I hated his decision. I didn't like the way that he went about it. I was very critical of the way he handled that. You know, but let me give him kudos at the same time. Alan Horn could have said, I will make myself look weak if I bring James Gunn back at this point. So I'm just going to be stubborn. I'm Alan Horn, damn it. I make no mistakes. I'm not going to do that. Instead, he didn't care about that. And he and James Gunn kept talking, and they came to some kind of resolution, clearly. Bridges were rebuilt. So in the midst of all this, I got to give a little tip of the cap to Alan Horn, too, because I was extremely harsh on the dude. Justifiably so, but, I mean, he kind of swallowed it and just said, yeah, let's fix this, and I appreciate that. This is a great story, Rob, to me, because we live in such a toxic environment these days.
And a dangerous one.
A career
can be taken away from you in an instant.
Just like that. And to see something like this, that, you know what? Nah, we still live in a world where cooler heads can prevail. Stupid things will be said, stupid things will be done, but that doesn't mean the situations entirely become write-offs. Cooler heads can prevail, and everybody can come out on the other side even better for it. And that's why I love this story. It's increased my appreciation for a James Gunn. It's increased what we're going to get as far as now we're going to get a DC movie from him and a Marvel movie from him, which is fantastic. I'm super stoked about that. And To me, it's just a great thing to read. Put a smile on my face, dude. Put a smile on my face.
Me too.
Again, guys, if you have not had a chance, these are just, like I said, little snippets from that interview. I highly recommend going and check out the interview on Deadline, and big kudos to Deadline for conducting a really, really great interview.